Imagine a world where heroes wore bright colors, yet fought invisible battles against censorship fear and fading memory. The 1960s was a golden dawn for animated courage, yet many caped legends vanished from television without a trace. What if the first wave of animated heroes was too daring for their time, too strange for networks, and too visionary for the audience that followed? Number 25, The Mighty Hercules, 1963. Once a Saturday morning staple. The Mighty Hercules was hailed as a mythic adventure that turned Greek legend into hero worship for kids. It followed the demigod as he defended Mount Olympus from monsters and magic. The show's simple animation masked a surprising moral tone, teaching virtues of strength and wisdom. But soon, whispers began. Parents claimed the violent battles and constant lightning strikes carried pagan undertones. Religious groups protested its depiction of gods and ancient rituals. Some TV stations quietly dropped the series, fearing backlash during a decade obsessed with moral purity. Behind the scenes, low budgets forced the studio to recycle footage, giving the show an eerie, repetitive rhythm. Voice actors juggled multiple roles, often recording in single takes. The creative team dreamed of more epic stories, but censorship and budget collapse stopped them cold. When the final thunder faded, Hercules disappeared from syndication. Yet fans, decades later, rediscovered its mythic tone online, calling it the first true attempt to bring heroism and spirituality together in children's animation. In its silence, the Mighty Hercules still echoes like a divine memory of forgotten courage. Number 24. Space Angel, 1962. Space Angel was a daring fusion of pulp sci-fi and noir detective storytelling. It featured Scott McCloud, a space pilot defending the galaxy with calm courage and animated lips, pasted over still drawings, a surreal technique known as synchrovox. It gave the show a dreamlike floating quality. But critics at the time were merciless. They called the technique lazy, the plots too adult for kids, and the moral themes too cold for comfort. Space Angel dared to tackle espionage and interplanetary war when television wanted lighthearted heroics. Sponsors panicked, thinking parents would revolt over scenes of alien executions and interplanetary politics. Production chaos followed. Budgets were slashed, animators left mid-season, and the show's creator was rumored to have clashed with distributors over tone and content. By 1964, it had vanished from the airwaves, replaced by safer heroes with brighter smiles. Today, Space Angel stands as an artifact of brave experimentation, a cartoon that refused to talk down to its viewers. Its lost style and dark storytelling hinted at a future where space heroes would face moral ambiguity long before it became fashionable. Number 23. King Leonardo and His Short Subjects, 1960. Premiering at the dawn of the 1960s superhero boom, King Leonardo mixed political satire with animal heroes and secret agents. The titular Lion King ruled Bongo Congo alongside his loyal skunk minister, Odie. Together they defended their kingdom against mad scientists and power-hungry rivals. At first, families loved it. The humor felt light, the colors bright, the action innocent. But soon, critics noticed its sharp edges. The show's political jokes about dictators and coups hit too close to Cold War nerves. Television executives began cutting entire scenes, calling them subversive. Educational groups even accused it of teaching kids political cynicism. Behind the curtain, creative control shifted constantly. Voice actors improvised jokes, producers censored them later. Budget cuts caused inconsistent animation, and storylines ended mid-episode. Yet beneath the chaos, King Leonardo's writers smuggled sly messages about freedom and corruption through cartoon disguise. By 1963, it was gone. Few prints survived, yet animation historians later called it one of television's bravest early attempts to use heroism as social commentary. Its disappearance left a quiet void where satire and courage once met in the unlikeliest jungle kingdom. Number 22, The Marvel Superheroes, 1966. This series was Marvel's first leap into television animation, a collage of comic book panels brought crudely to life. Each episode featured legends like Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, and the Hulk, yet the animation barely moved. Characters spoke through static frames and dramatic narration. Kids loved the novelty, but parents and critics mocked its rough edges. Rumors spread that the limited motion was due to censorship limits on violence. Others whispered that Marvel's creators clashed with producers over tone. Scenes showing Captain America punching Nazis were allegedly softened for American audiences still sensitive about war imagery. Behind the scenes, voice actors raced through scripts, while artists traced comic panels directly from Jack Kirby's originals. Despite its flaws, it brought superhero mythology into living rooms for the first time. But after one season, networks called it too cheap and too intense for children's time slots. Today, the Marvel superheroes survives only through grainy tapes and nostalgia. It laid the foundation for modern superhero animation, yet vanished before anyone realized how revolutionary it truly was. Number 21. Super President, 1967. Super President may be the strangest superhero of its decade. The Commander-in-Chief of the United States gained cosmic powers after a space accident and secretly fought villains while managing the nation. For a brief moment, America watched its own leader save the world with laser fists and moral speeches. But the backlash was immediate. Critics called it unpatriotic, absurd, and dangerously political. Parents wrote angry letters saying it mocked the real presidency during Vietnam era. Tension. NBC executives panicked, canceling the series after protests from both conservatives and liberals. Behind the scenes, animators struggled to balance satire and heroism. Scripts were rewritten daily to remove political references. Some episodes never aired at all. By 1968, the cartoon was gone, its master tapes shelved and forgotten. Decades later, fans uncovered episodes online, marveling at how bizarre and bold it was. In an age obsessed with authority, Super President dared to ask what happens when ultimate power meets ultimate responsibility. It disappeared because it told too much truth through too bright a costume. Number 20. The New Adventures of Superman, 1966. When Superman returned to television in animated form, he was seen as the ultimate symbol of justice, truth, and Saturday morning wonder. The New Adventures of Superman reintroduced the Man of Steel to a generation still recovering from the loss of the classic live-action show. The episodes were short, fast-paced, and packed with patriotic zeal. But under the shining surface controversy brewed. The Federal Communications Commission received letters from parents claiming the show promoted violence and blind faith in authority. Critics accused the studio of turning Superman into propaganda for American power during the height of Cold War anxiety. Some even said the exaggerated heroics were too frightening for children. Behind production doors, chaos reigned. The animation was rushed, the budgets low, and the sound mixing often mismatched. Writers had to battle censors who demanded that Superman never harm a human even accidentally. This forced bizarre script rewrites where villains were defeated by clever tricks rather than strength. Despite the tension, Superman's animated rebirth left a mark. It inspired future generations of superhero animators and laid the groundwork for an entire decade of costumed crusaders. Yet, for all its optimism, The New Adventures of Superman stood as a reminder that even heroes could be censored by fear. Number 19. The Adventures of Aquaman, 1967. The Adventures of Aquaman emerged as part of Filmation's growing empire of superhero shows and presented a bold underwater world unlike anything on television. It featured King Arthur Curry, the ruler of Atlantis, battling invaders from the deep with his loyal dolphins and seahorses. The premise promised endless oceanic mystery, but the execution stirred waves of unrest. Parents claimed the show's deep-sea monsters were too grotesque for children. Religious groups criticized its mythological undertones, calling it pagan storytelling. Television networks edited scenes showing environmental destruction, fearing they might be seen as political commentary. Production was rushed and frantic. Animators reused backgrounds, entire scenes repeated from earlier episodes. The voice actors worked without guidance, while scripts were altered overnight to avoid controversy. Despite the turmoil, it became a quiet symbol of early environmental awareness, portraying ocean pollution as a villain long before it became a national debate. The series faded quietly by the end of the decade, but years later, fans rediscovered its haunting sound design and surreal visuals. Today, The Adventures of Aquaman remains an eerie time capsule where fantasy, heroism, and social conscience collided beneath the waves. Number 18. Space Ghost, 1966. Space Ghost stormed onto screens as a galactic defender cloaked in mystery and stoic strength. Each episode sent him and his teenage sidekicks soaring across alien worlds, battling monsters and cosmic criminals. Viewers adored its sharp action and booming narration. For a brief moment, Space Ghost was the ultimate television hero of the future. Yet rumors surrounded its production. Some claimed its serious tone clashed with network expectations of light comedy. Others said the show's dark space imagery frightened children. A few critics even alleged it carried hidden war allegories during the height of space race paranoia. Sponsors demanded that certain episodes be softened to toned-down destruction scenes. Hanna-Barbera's animators worked under immense pressure recycling animation to save money while attempting cinematic scope. The result was visually stunning, yet narratively fragmented. When the series ended abruptly, many wondered if it had simply been too ambitious, too intelligent for its audience. Years later, Space Ghost returned as a parody talk show host, yet his original series remains a haunting masterpiece. It was an experiment that dared to merge heroism with existential dread, and it vanished because it took space adventure too seriously. Number 17. Birdman and the Galaxy Trio, 1967. Birdman and the Galaxy Trio combined two worlds of cosmic heroism. Birdman, a solar-powered Avenger, defended Earth while three intergalactic champions battled injustice across the stars. The dual format was groundbreaking but confusing. Kids tuned in expecting fun heroes. Adults saw an allegory for Cold War power and radiation fear. The series suffered from strict network control. Scenes of Birdman absorbing sunlight were deemed too intense for younger viewers. Some episodes were edited mid-broadcast to remove dialogue about nuclear energy. Even the villains were softened, turning from alien threats to harmless pranksters. Behind the curtain, writers clashed with producers over tone and vision. The show's creator wanted deep moral conflict, but sponsors demanded cheerful simplicity. Despite its struggles, Birdman and the Galaxy Trio built an artistic foundation that future creators admired. Its mix of mythic heroism and atomic anxiety mirrored the decade's tension between progress and paranoia. When it ended, no one noticed, but decades later, nostalgia resurrected it as cult history. Beneath its radiant wings, the story of Birdman still burns quietly with cosmic fire. Number 16. The Atom Ant Show, 1965. Atom Ant may have been small, but his ambition towered over television. This tiny insect hero used atomic energy to fight crime rescue innocents and outsmart villains with pure brainpower. The show's cheerful tone disguised its hidden theme about power and responsibility during an age obsessed with nuclear energy. Parents at first adored its harmless humor, but that changed quickly. Teachers and scientists criticized the message, claiming it made atomic energy look like a toy. Networks grew nervous after reports that children imitated Atom Ant's explosive antics at home. To calm panic, executives ordered episodes re-edited or pulled entirely. Behind production walls, the Hanna-Barbera team juggled two shows at once, leading to exhausting workdays and collapsing schedules. Voice actors improvised most dialogue, while animators struggled to keep up with demand. By 1967, the Atom Ant Show quietly vanished from schedules. Its prince vanished for decades before reappearing in obscure VHS compilations. Today, it is remembered not just as a playful cartoon, but as a symbol of an era when science imagination and fear collided on children's screens. Number 15. Frankenstein Jr. and the Impossibles, 1966. Frankenstein Jr. and the Impossibles dared to blend mad science with pop music and superhero adventure. Created by Hanna-Barbera, it followed a teenage genius named Buzz Conroy, who built a towering robot companion named Frankenstein Jr. Together, they fought crime and saved humanity, while a trio of rock musicians called the Impossibles secretly lived double lives as masked heroes. At first, it seemed unstoppable. Children adored the wild transformations, the colorful gadgets, and the blend of technology and comedy. Yet adults viewed it differently. Religious groups protested its use of the Frankenstein name, saying it glorified monsters and moral confusion. Others accused it of promoting rebellion since the heroes were disguised as musicians, a growing symbol of youth defiance during the decade of protest. Behind the bright smiles, the production was chaotic. The voice cast often recorded lines without context since multiple episodes were animated at once. Network censors demanded that the word monster be removed from marketing material, fearing backlash from conservative parents. Some episodes were never rerun, and entire segments disappeared from archives when the show was quietly retired in 1968. Over time, Frankenstein Jr. and the Impossibles became a lost artifact from an age when science, music, and morality collided. It reflected a generation caught between invention and innocence. Even now, its faint mechanical laughter echoes as a reminder that not all heroes wear capes. Some are built in laboratories and buried by fear. Number 14. The Mighty Heroes, 1966. The Mighty Heroes was a strange mixture of slapstick and satire about a team of bumbling defenders who somehow always managed to save their city. Created by Ralph Bakshi before his later fame, it introduced heroes like Rope Man, Tornado Man, and Strong Man, all ridiculous, yet oddly sincere. Beneath the jokes lay an unsettling mirror of society's blind trust in incompetent authority. When it aired, children laughed, but adults sensed a darker subtext. The show's villains often resembled politicians or businessmen, and its stories hinted that heroism itself might be an illusion. Critics labeled it anarchic, while parents complained it encouraged kids to mock leadership. Networks hesitated, unsure whether it was comedy or rebellion disguised as a cartoon. Production was wild and unpredictable. Bakshi's team used surreal designs and experimental pacing that confused censors. Some episodes ran over schedule because the jokes were rewritten at the last moment to dodge political satire accusations. When ratings dipped, the studio buried it quietly without ceremony. Decades later, animation historians rediscovered The Mighty Heroes and saw it as a rare prelude to adult animation that dared to question power. It vanished not because it failed, but because it told truths television was not ready to laugh at. Today it survives as a rare spark of absurd genius that mocked its own genre and paid the price for honesty. Number 13. The Fantastic Four, 1967. The Fantastic Four arrived in animated form as part of Marvel's growing empire. Produced by Hanna-Barbera, it promised cosmic adventure and family heroism. For young fans, it was thrilling to finally see Mr. Fantastic, the Invisible Girl. The Human Torch and the Thing come to life in Saturday morning form. Yet its greatness also became its curse. Censors quickly took notice. Scenes involving fire and destruction were heavily edited since children had begun imitating the Human Torch's fiery catchphrase. Episodes featuring alien worlds were cut for being too frightening. Critics also claimed the show's depiction of science and radiation was irresponsible during an era haunted by nuclear fear. Behind the scenes, the tension grew worse. Budgets were slashed to the bone, and episodes were recycled using stock footage. Even Stan Lee's supervision could not stop the network from demanding softer plots and moral lessons. By 1968, the series had collapsed under censorship and exhaustion. Yet the legacy of the Fantastic Four endured. It was the first attempt to bring Marvel's heart and human flaws to television, paving the way for all superhero animation that followed. Though the flames of the Human Torch dimmed on television, they still burn in the memories of those who saw heroism mixed with tragedy. Number 12. Batfink, 1966. Batfink was a parody of Batman before parody was cool. The hero was a small bat-like figure with wings of steel and a sidekick named Karate, his loyal partner. Together, they battled outlandish villains, armed with strange weapons and absurd plots. It was witty fast and filled with self-aware humor that most viewers of the time did not fully understand. Some parents loved its moral lessons, while others accused it of promoting violence disguised as comedy. Rumors spread that certain episodes mocked American law enforcement with their inept police characters. Television stations in conservative regions refused to air them. The show's producer, Jay Ward, allegedly faced pressure to tone down the satire, but refused to compromise. The result was chaos behind the curtain. Animators complained of endless revisions and creative disagreements. Voice actors recorded dozens of lines that were never used. Episodes vanished or aired out of order, making the show feel even stranger. By 1967, Batfink was off the air, replaced by safer cartoons about talking animals and moral stories. Years later, fans rediscovered it as one of the first postmodern superhero comedies. Its humor was too clever for its time, and its courage too sharp for a cautious industry. Today, Batfink stands as proof that even laughter can be dangerous when aimed at authority. Number 11. The Superman-Aquaman Hour of Adventure, 1967. The Superman-Aquaman Hour of Adventure was an ambitious crossover uniting two legendary heroes into a single broadcast. Produced by Filmation, it promised the ultimate combination of land and sea justice. Each episode paired animated tales of Superman's cosmic battles with Aquaman's underwater quests, plus short segments featuring other DC heroes like the Flash and Hawkman. For young audiences, it was paradise, but networks soon faced a storm. The show's violence was scrutinized by parents' groups who claimed it glorified warfare. The National Association for Better Broadcasting even demanded its cancellation. The studio responded by removing entire fight scenes, replacing them with moral speeches and shortened endings. Production grew increasingly desperate. Writers were instructed to remove all references to real-world issues and focus on generic villains. Meanwhile, the animators reused scenes repeatedly to save money. Despite the struggles, the series created the first shared universe in superhero animation long before the idea became fashionable. By 1969, it was gone, yet its influence endured. Every modern crossover owes something to its vision. The Superman-Aquaman Hour of Adventure may have sunk beneath censorship, but it set the stage for unity among heroes, reminding the world that justice often begins in forgotten experiments. Number 10. Captain Nice, 1967. Captain Nice was one of the strangest and most misunderstood superhero cartoons ever broadcast. It followed mild-mannered police chemist Carter Nash, who created a super serum that transformed him into the bumbling hero, Captain Nice. His costume looked like a parody of Superman, and his clumsy antics turned traditional heroism into absurd comedy. When it debuted, it was praised for its humor and originality, yet controversy arrived quickly. Parents accused it of mocking patriotism, since Captain Nice wore stars and stripes while stumbling through missions. Networks worried that the satire was too biting for young viewers. Sponsors began pulling support, saying the show blurred the line between heroism and mockery. Behind-the-curtain production was frantic. The writing team constantly battled studio censors, who demanded that Captain Nice be made more respectable. Each episode was rewritten multiple times until the humor lost its edge. The creative team grew frustrated, calling it the funniest show no one was allowed to laugh at. By the end of its short run, Captain Nice disappeared from airwaves, leaving behind fragments of a concept too bold for its time. Today, it survives in scattered archives and fan memories, a lost experiment that dared to ask whether heroes must always be perfect to matter. Number 9. Mighty Mouse. The New Adventures, 1967. Mighty Mouse had already been a household name, but the New Adventures tried to revive him for a new generation. The show mixed traditional superhero heroics with campy humor, turning the tiny mouse into a symbol of unshakable optimism. At first, it seemed harmless, even charming, but not everyone agreed. Critics argued that the new version lacked the moral seriousness of earlier episodes. Parents wrote letters claiming it encouraged reckless behavior, since Mighty Mouse often used violence to solve problems. Some stations censored entire scenes where the mouse smashed villains through walls or tossed cars. Animators were frustrated when executives ordered them to replace fight scenes with extended dialogue and jokes. Behind the scenes, tensions soared. The production budget was tiny and the animation rushed. Voice actors worked double shifts to meet impossible deadlines. The creative team wanted to push satire, but the studio demanded safe humor for children. The result was a conflicted series, torn between courage and caution. After only one season, it vanished. Yet decades later, animation historians hailed it as a symbol of resilience, proof that even in censorship, heavy times, creativity still fought to survive. Mighty Mouse. The New Adventures remains a story of innocence facing corporate fear and losing beautifully. Number 8. Spider-Man, 1967. Spider-Man swung into homes across America with one of the most unforgettable theme songs in television history. The show captured the excitement of Stan Lee's comic, but presented it through haunting visuals and eerie silence. For children, it was thrilling yet strangely melancholic as Peter Parker faced loneliness alongside monsters of the week. But soon, networks grew nervous. The dark tone and surreal backdrops felt too mature for Saturday mornings. Rumors spread that animators reused psychedelic art from canceled adult shows. Censors demanded lighter stories, yet the studio lacked funds to change course. The final episodes turned dreamlike, with Spider-Man drifting through abstract cityscapes that felt more like nightmares than adventures. Behind production walls, morale collapsed. The team worked with shoestring budgets, forcing endless animation loops and static backgrounds. Despite these limits, the directors crafted moody art that predated the visual style of later cult classics. Critics were confused, but fans sensed something profound beneath the simplicity. Spider-Man lasted only 3 seasons, but its ghost still lingers through memes and nostalgia. It proved that even in cheap animation, a soul could hide. Its darkness inspired generations of artists to find beauty in isolation and courage in imperfection. Number 7. The Atom, 1967. The Atom introduced television audiences to Ray Palmer, the scientist who could shrink himself to microscopic size and fight crime at a level invisible to the naked eye. It was part of Filmation's growing DC lineup and promised thrilling science-based adventures. At first, it was praised for imagination and intelligence, but soon trouble followed. Parents' groups protested its constant references to radiation and atomic energy, saying it glorified dangerous science. Some newspapers even linked the show to public fear of nuclear accidents. Filmation responded by rewriting scripts to remove references to radiation, but that stripped away the show's scientific edge. Critics called it hollow and confusing. Behind the scenes, animators struggled to depict scale changes convincingly using limited technology. The result often looked awkward yet strangely poetic, with tiny heroes floating through cosmic voids. Writers clashed with producers over tone, while budgets dwindled rapidly. When the show ended, it vanished without reruns, its tapes left in storage. Years later, collectors rediscovered episodes and called them surreal masterpieces ahead of their time. The Atom became a lost metaphor for human smallness in a vast universe. It was canceled for fear of misunderstanding, yet remembered for daring to think small in a world obsessed with power. Number 6. The Adventures of the Galaxy Rangers, 1968. Before space westerns became a phenomenon, there was The Adventures of the Galaxy Rangers, an ambitious fusion of cowboy myth and interstellar justice. The show followed a squad of lawmen patrolling the stars, balancing ancient honor with futuristic weapons. Each episode blended Western grit with cosmic mystery, a combination that fascinated critics but confused censors. Parents complained that it was too violent and too mature for children. The design of alien villains was considered too grotesque. Religious leaders called it blasphemous for portraying heroes as gun-wielding saviors in space. Some episodes were banned outright in conservative regions. Behind the production curtain, animators poured heart and soul into each frame, working with minuscule budgets and tight schedules. The creators believed they were making the next great American myth, a fusion of frontier justice and science fiction. Yet low ratings and rising controversy doomed it after one season. For decades it was nearly forgotten until fans uncovered copies and realized how visionary it had been. The Adventures of the Galaxy Rangers predicted future genres from cyberpunk to Star Wars-style epics. Its disappearance marked the end of one of television's boldest animated experiments, the dream of cowboys in the cosmos. Number 5. The Herculoids, 1967. The Herculoids was one of the most daring and imaginative superhero cartoons of the decade. Created by Hanna-Barbera, it told the story of a family defending their alien planet from invaders with the help of strange living creatures made of rock slime and laser energy. The show mixed prehistoric fantasy with futuristic science, and no one had ever seen anything like it. At first, audiences were captivated. Children loved the action. Adults admired the artistry, yet controversy soon followed. Critics said the show was too violent for its time since entire cities were destroyed and monsters vaporized in blasts of light. Networks grew uneasy about its savage tone, fearing it blurred the line between hero and beast. Behind the scenes, animators pushed every limit of technology. The team used experimental color layering and bold abstract designs that challenged television norms. Censors constantly intervened, demanding that explosions be toned down and battle cries softened. Some episodes were banned from reruns for being too intense. When the series ended after only a handful of episodes, it seemed forgotten. But decades later, it returned in reruns and collectors hailed it as visionary. The Herculoids had dared to show that courage and chaos could coexist. It was the sound of the future roaring out of primitive imagination. Number 4. The Adventures of Batman, 1968. Before Batman became a dark legend of cinema, he was a bright cartoon hero brought to life in The Adventures of Batman. Produced by Filmation, the show drew from the success of the live-action series but added a surreal animated edge. Robin the Boy Wonder joined his mentor to battle villains in stories filled with gadgets and color. At first it looked safe, wholesome, and patriotic. Yet the show's tone quickly shifted into something stranger. Villains were grotesque, the backgrounds moody, and Batman's crusade began to resemble obsession more than justice. Parents worried it was too frightening for children, while censors ordered scenes cut for depicting psychological tension. Behind the scenes, Filmation's animators worked at breakneck speed, creating 20 episodes in record time. Scripts were rewritten overnight to remove anything considered disturbing. Rumors spread that the network canceled planned crossover episodes, fearing they might upset sponsors. Despite all this, the animation team believed they had captured Batman's deeper loneliness and moral struggle. After cancellation, the series vanished into the vaults, but collectors later restored it, calling it the first animated version to hint at the darker myth to come. The Adventures of Batman remains a forgotten shadow, a faint echo of the hero's future cinematic destiny. Number 3. Johnny Cypher in Dimension Zero, 1967. Johnny Cypher in Dimension Zero was one of the strangest cartoons ever made. It followed a scientist who could travel through dimensions, battling alien dictators and cosmic demons with his intellect and invention. On paper, it sounded like thrilling science fiction, but what emerged was far weirder. Audiences were divided. Children found it confusing. Adults found it hypnotic. Each episode was drenched in abstract color and surreal imagery that felt closer to experimental film than Saturday morning television. Rumors spread that animators were influenced by avant-garde art movements. Critics accused the show of being too cerebral for young audiences and too childish for adults. Production was chaotic. The voice acting was minimalist and the writing intentionally cryptic. Episodes ran far over budget, and sponsors were baffled. Networks began pulling it from schedules, claiming it frightened children. By 1968, it was gone almost without a trace. Decades later, archivists discovered that many episodes had been destroyed, leaving only fragments. What survived revealed a visionary attempt to mix philosophy and adventure in animation. Johnny Cypher in Dimension Zero remains an unsolved mystery of its era, a cosmic dream that vanished into television oblivion. Number 2. Mighty Hercules and the Titans, 1966. Few remember that before modern superhero teams, there was an animated experiment called Mighty Hercules and the Titans. It gathered several mythic heroes into one alliance to battle gods and monsters. The idea was revolutionary, a proto-Justice League set in the world of Greek legend. Yet from the start it faced resistance. Religious organizations condemned it for portraying pagan mythology on television. Parents said the violence was excessive since monsters were often vaporized. Sponsors backed away, and the network panicked, demanding that entire story arcs be rewritten to remove divine references. The result was a confusing final cut that pleased no one. Behind the scenes, animators worked under impossible pressure. The writers wanted a sweeping saga, but the network demanded short segments. Actors were forced to re-record entire episodes overnight to avoid perceived controversy. Within a year, the series was quietly buried. For decades, no complete version was ever found. Only scattered clips resurfaced, showing glimpses of epic battles that predated later superhero universes. Mighty Hercules and the Titans remains a forgotten prophecy of what animated hero teams could become. Its disappearance was not failure, but fear of its own brilliance. Number 1. The Mighty Thor, 1966. The Mighty Thor was Marvel's most ambitious animated venture of the decade. Adapted from the comic created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, it followed the Norse god of thunder as he defended both Asgard and Earth. Each frame was filled with grandiose speech, ancient legend, and cosmic war. Yet its boldness became its downfall. Audiences were stunned by its mythic tone, but critics called it too violent, too archaic, and too foreign for American children. Religious groups condemned it for depicting gods as superheroes. The network censored episodes, removing scenes of destruction and divine wrath. Some claimed that the animation's raw comic panel style frightened young viewers more than it thrilled them. Behind production walls, artists worked frantically tracing Kirby's drawings directly to save money. The result was static, yet striking an animated comic that felt like living mythology. The creators dreamed of expanding it into an Asgardian saga, but the backlash killed those plans. Within months, the Mighty Thor was gone, yet decades later, fans rediscovered it and hailed it as the first true attempt to merge epic mythology with modern heroism. The Mighty Thor was too powerful for its age and too honest about divine struggle. It vanished in censorship, but its hammer still echoes across time. These forgotten superhero cartoons were not failures, but sacrifices of vision. Each dared to explore courage, fear, and identity long before animation was free to dream. They were pioneers buried by panic. Which one do you think deserves revival? Tell us below, and remember, the legends we lose often tell the greatest truths. Like, share, and subscribe for more forgotten history.